We've crossed the finish line. The 2014 midterm elections are in the history books, and it's the Republicans by a mile. Here with all the post-race wrap-up, I'm John Phillips, and this is Poll Position. Here are the final poll numbers from before Election Day and how the vote actually went down for the crucial races that determine control of the United States Senate. Let's start with Virginia, where every skin is red, including the Redskins football team and the faces of pollsters who blew this one. It wasn't on anyone's radar, but it became a toss-up, and very close is very close to flipping to the Republican column. In Virginia, before the actual election, the polls had Mark Warner, the Democrat, up by 10 points, 48-38. When the votes actually went down, Mark Warner is ahead by a hair, 49.2 to 48.4 for Ed Gillespie. That one is expected to go to a recount, and once you have a recount, who knows what could happen. In Arkansas, Democrats at one point pulled their money from that state because they said the Republican was so far ahead. They then started to dump money back into it. The final poll had the Republican Tom Cotton up 48-41. The results said a different story. That was a blowout. Tom Cotton ended up winning 56-39. That one wasn't close. In Colorado, the purple state that was up for grabs in the Rocky Mountains, the final poll had Cory Gardner up by a hair, 46-44. The results more heavily in favor of the Republican, 49.4 to 45.2. In the state of Iowa, Joni Ernst was leading Bruce Braley by just a hair in the final poll, 48-45. The results had Joni Ernst up 52.2 to 43.7. That one also not as close when the votes were actually counted. In North Carolina, the polls had Democrat Kay Hagan up 44.1 to 43.4 to her Republican opponent Thom Tillis. On Election Day, there was a different story. Thom Tillis ended up besting her 49% to 47.3%. In Georgia, the polls had a tight one with Republican David Perdue, 47.8%. Michelle Nunn, the Democrat, 44.8%, so within the margin of error. Final results had the Republican way out ahead, 53% to 45.1% for Democrat Michelle Nunn. In the state of Kentucky, Mitch McConnell, the Republican, had 49% in the final poll. Allison Lundgren Grimes, 41.8%. This one exceeded everyone's expectations. Mitch McConnell won 56.2 to 40.7. MSNBC pundits all shell-shocked. One of my favorite moments of the night. In the state of Kansas, Independent Greg Orman was in the driver's seat, according to the final poll, 43.4% to Pat Roberts, 42.6%. On Election Day, Pat Roberts pounded him 53% to 42%. I guess Kansans don't like it when you call Bob Dole a clown. In New Hampshire, Democrat Jeanne Shaheen led the final poll, 48.8% to 48% for Scott Brown, effectively a tie when the votes were actually counted. This was the only state that broke for the Democrat. Jeanne Shaheen won with 51.6%. Scott Brown ended up with 48.4%. In the Bayou, Democrat Mary Landrieu polled around 40%, 40.2 to be exact. The two Republicans split the remaining vote. On Election Day, Mary Landrieu scored just a couple of points ahead of where she was in the polls at 42%. Bill Cassidy at 41% finished right behind her. The Tea Party candidate garnered 13.8%. That's going to a runoff in December. Up in the frozen tundra of Alaska, Dan Sullivan, the Republican, was polling ahead of the Democrat Mark Begich, 46% to 43%. He ended up on election night about 3 or 4% above Mark Begich, 49% to 45.3%. They're still counting absentee ballots there, so we don't have an official winner yet, but it's looking good for the Republican. On Election Day, Nate Silver's 538 blog forecast that the GOP had a 76.2% chance of taking control of the Senate, while the Democrats had a paltry 23.8% chance of retaining it. The final result, the GOP won 7 new seats, lost none, and now has a 52-seat majority. They'll likely win another seat if Louisiana's runoff goes to the Republican. Then you have the seat in Alaska, which when that's decided would give another seat to the Republicans, so that might make it 9 seats. Virginia's going to a runoff. that could give the Republicans yet another seat in the United States Senate. It was a thrilling race, but in the end, Republicans own the road. Thanks so much for cheering along with us here on The Pole Position, and be sure to keep up with all the latest news and politics right here at PJTV. I'm John Phillips. Thanks for watching.